everybody, and welcome into the H&M Trucking Podcast, episode 75, Driver Appreciation Week episode, and I feel like that deserves a party horn. We celebrate our drivers year-round here at H&M Trucking, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to blow it out a little bit on this podcast for the week of driver appreciation. Now, I know I've heard the gripes before. Sometimes Driver Appreciation Week turns into Staff Appreciation Week because the drivers are out on the road. They don't get to come and take part in all the cool stuff. For those of you that are out on the road, we appreciate you very much, and I hope that this episode will just be kind of a love letter from H&M to you drivers, because we are going to hear from Van Department Manager Brian Gernandt, Hopper Department Manager Brenda Hampton, and also President of H&M James Fonda. They're all going to tell you why Driver Appreciation Week is important and send some messages to you guys that they want you to hear. I thought about doing just a crazy overloaded episode with a ton of drivers on it, but I also thought, hey, that's going to put a little bit more work on the driver's shoulders. I'm going to ask them to, section out some time for me, and that's not what I want to do. I want you guys to have all the time that you can have. So got to thinking about a good way to execute this episode, and I thought, let's bring on the powers that be. Let's talk to the department managers, and let's talk to James, and let's have them talk about why they appreciate the drivers so much. And we have some great interviews coming up around the corner for you to really wrap your head around that. We'll talk to James first, and then we'll get Brian and Brenda in here. So make sure you stay tuned. Really great episode today. I'm excited about it for more reasons than one. I've said on this podcast many times before, all you have to do is shoot me a message, whether that be on Facebook. If you have my email, a lot of the drivers out there have my phone number, so you're more than happy to text me, and I love that. And sometimes some things come out of that, and today I've actually got to thank one. Teddy Arnold sent me this clip that I'm about to play you, and you might think, well, what does this have to do with Driver Appreciation Week? Nothing, really, other than I hope that you appreciate this funny clip as much as I did, because it's just, that's all that it is. It's funny. I'm going to set it up for you here in a little bit, but I first want to drive home that point. Teddy's very comfortable emailing me. Tom Wood's another guy who's very comfortable getting in touch with me. And listen, if you ask them, if you see them out there on the road, they'll tell you, Marcus is more than happy to answer texts, answer phone calls. I once had a driver tell me that talking to me was like talking to a best friend you never knew you had. It almost made me well up with tears, and you guys know, based on last week's episode, that I'm quicker to that than you may have ever thought. But I really do take that as a compliment, and I hold it near and dear to my heart. I'm here for you guys. I want to talk to you. I want to develop relationships with you. As far as I'm concerned, we should have the same kind of relationship that you and your dispatcher have. You should be comfortable calling me whenever you want to. And if I'm available, I'm going to pick up that dang phone and we're going to have a conversation. Or if you text me, I'm going to fire one back as soon as I can get around to it. Same with the email and the Facebook messages. So please get in touch with me. Maybe you've got ideas for the podcast. I get ideas all the time thrown my way, and we do our very best to try to put them in action and build an episode around those ideas, or if nothing else, at least a segment. And in this case, Teddy sent this to me on Facebook just because he thought it was funny, and I can't thank him enough. It's hilarious. What you're about to hear is actual scanner audio of a police officer calling in an incident that you might not normally hear over the scanner. And I have to tip my cap to these officers of the law here because they work a very serious job, much like you drivers do. And there's not a lot of room when they're doing their job for fun, okay? It just doesn't happen that much. But it happened here today when a turkey got involved with a police officer. Here's the scanner audio.
333, go ahead.
I've got a turkey attacking my cruiser.
3301 to 333, please take video.
10-4, he has no fear.
333, what's the 20?
I am on Evergreen at Hay Meadow and Grand Chute.
Or do you need backup units?
I don't know what they're going to do. 333 Fond du Lac. I tried to use my siren to scare him out of the road so he wouldn't get struck, and I think he took it as a challenge.
10-4.
Is he playing chicken with you? Yeah, 1040 is good. I'm trying to de-escalate. Currently negotiating. He is pecking at my tire.
10-4.
33 Fond du Lac. I'm currently in a foot pursuit. Eastbound. Male. About 2 feet tall. Short beard.
10-4. 33, do you have the clothing description?
Mostly brown. Some red and white trim. 358 Fond du Lac. This 333 need a 33 response.
333, do you need backup emergent for the turkey attack?
333 Fond du Lac. 1045.
Units on scene at the turkey attack, status check?
333 Fond du Lac. We're 10-2. If you're holding the towers for us, you can clear them. The citizens of the neighborhood have been advised to keep an eye out for the suspect.
330.
Great job to that local police department there. Give them a round of applause. I mean, you gotta find some time in your day to share a smile, and they maintain professionalism because they were on the scanner and they know that that's all just public. You could just buy a police scanner and listen to that, and you could hear her, the dispatcher. She was trying so hard not to laugh when she asked for a clothing description and when she asked if they needed backup. And you've got another officer out there on the road that chimes in, please take video. You've got a foot pursuit. You hear the siren trying to scare this turkey away. Listen, if you've never crossed paths with an angry, pissed off turkey, it's a little bit more terrifying than what you might imagine. I would put it akin to a goose. Everybody talks about how geese are the devil and how they're mean and they'll attack you when they're protecting their roost. Well, turkeys, they'll just come after you. They don't have to be protecting anything. They could be standing in the middle of a field eating and see you, and all of a sudden, you are their worst enemy. I love this. Thanks again to Teddy Arnold for sending me this. If you guys see stuff like this, we've played it before. There was a clip that we played months ago where a truck driver called his dispatcher and narrated an angry road rager getting beat loud by old ladies with their purses. Again, I will say about that one, I don't know how real that one was, but it was hilarious. This one, you hear the sirens, you hear all the code that they're talking, 10-2, that means we're good to go. You guys know the 10 codes out there. You're more familiar with that stuff than I am. Hilarious stuff here, again, sent to us by Teddy Arnold, and can't thank him enough for that. We've got some great some great staff interviews coming up right here around the corner. First, we're going to get to President James Fonda, so enjoy.
From Omaha, Nebraska, to whatever lane you're driving, this is the H&M Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
It's Driver Appreciation Week here on the H&M Trucking Podcast, and we're pulling out all the stops and bringing in the big guns. I've got the president of H&M Trucking, Mr. James Fonda, here. Thank you so much for the time, James. We always appreciate your appearing on the show.
Glad to be here.
So before we get into Driver Appreciation Week, I've got to ask you, as a Nebraska football fan, do you feel like your conference, the Big Ten, is a bit more exciting for some reason this year?
I don't know. I think USC is kind of fun. Oregon can't. I don't know. Oregon doesn't look that good.
We haven't put it together yet.
I thought that they would bring more to the conference. Really, I mean, we probably should set them to Big 12. You think?
Ouch. Okay. All right. I mean, look, I knew this was coming.
Hey. We started off with a win with an Pac-12, so we'll just continue the wins going forward. So it's gonna be a nice season. We'll probably roll into Ohio State undefeated. Oscar's got some positivity looking. But real talk, I do love having more teams in the conference. I think it's just kind of crazy to think that it goes from the West Coast to East Coast. I saw a clip from is the Game of Thrones theme entrance song to the Big Ten, and I loved it. I was like, yes, this is what we needed.
Yeah. It's crazy to look at the standings. I pulled up the Big Ten standings the other day, and I feel like I had to scroll 3 times to get to the bottom of it and see who was last right now. And that is wild. I mean, college football's changed. That's all there is to it. And yeah, you're right. You know, the Ducks, we didn't look as good as we thought we would over those first 2 weeks, but looking to put it together, man. And you've got such a talented roster over there. I'll be honest with you. The more I've been paying attention to it now, I really like Matt Rule. I mean, he's one of those guys. I feel like you're sitting on the couch listening to him and you're ready to run through a wall for that guy.
Yeah, when we first hired him, I was like, all right. And then I listened to some sermons because his dad was a priest, and he did. And I was like, oh, like this guy's legit. And the first year, it's the first year. No one can gauge. But yeah, you can really tell that he's making these guys really believe in each other and be a team together. That's very evident. And you can have all the greatest players you want, but if you're not a team, it's pretty relevant. So
yeah, very true. Yeah. And you're working with our sloppy seconds in your backfield there. We had Dylan Raiola committed for a little while. Dante Dowdell played a couple years here at Oregon. You've gone through an old offensive coordinator of ours in Scott Frost. Is there anything else we can do for you guys over there in Nebraska? Would you like us to send Lanning your way if this Matt Rule thing falls apart?
Scott Frost here's a joke. Man, I went to go pull up Oregon on here on the big. Now you brought up the Big Ten standings, and man, you could be dropped pretty quick. I mean, you're right there next to Rutgers.
I mean, yeah,
I'd have never put Rutgers and Oregon next to each other. But here we are.
0-0 in conference play is a real bad place to be. Let's get to it so that all these words that we're talking will finally mean something. That's but it's my favorite time of year. You can tell that. I'm just more giddy. It's summer has turned to fall here in Oregon. I'm not sure how your guys' weather out there in Nebraska is, but we got rained on for like 3 days straight. And just last Saturday, I watched a football game in 95-degree weather. So fall's finally here. I'm calling it. It's football season. It's hunting season. It's harvest season. It's all that good stuff that comes along with fall. And, Driver Appreciation Week is a big part of that, obviously, and we'll get to that here in a moment. But I think you're going to hear us talk a little bit more college football as this year goes on from time to time here on the podcast, just because I can't shut up about it, James. You and I could talk about this for 3.5 hours every day.
Yeah, I could do this. And Stewie, I took Stewie to the Colorado game. He was all in.
That's awesome.
All in.
That's awesome. And what a great win to get.
It was the craziest environment. I haven't seen it like that since the 90s. Like, I haven't seen it like that since I was a kid. It was so cool.
That's awesome. I did see or hear some on the field audio from that game in pregame. And, of course, the Colorado players were talking mess. And after the coin toss, that place lit on fire. And it was cool to see because the only thing better than a Duck win is a Husky loss, and that's followed immediately by a Colorado loss. And we don't even play in the same conference anymore. I just can't stand hearing about him anymore. I'm over it.
At least we all can agree that we're all over Colorado.
Yeah. So it's I think the Dion show will be over here before another year goes by. So fingers crossed. Looking forward to see who has to clean that mess up. But enough about college football. Let's talk a little bit about Driver Appreciation Week here. Of course, I think one thing that we always want to bring up when we talk about Driver Appreciation Week is that appreciating the drivers is something that we're aiming to do year-round here at H&M Trucking. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I've made drivers such a focus since I've started H&M and taken over H&M. If it comes down to 1 week, what's your track record for the entire 365 days? And I show that pretty thoroughly. So to say Driver Appreciation Week, if some of these companies make a really big deal, every single day of that week, it's like, okay, well, but what do you do for them during the year? How much are you really paying attention to them? How much you really care about them? How much are you invested in their personal lives? And I can say that we do that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked to enough drivers on the show and had them echo those sentiments for sure. And it's not only just, the various bonuses and the various benefits and everything like that, but I think having a good culture and a good team working around the drivers is a big part of driver and employee appreciation when you think about it in general. And I know that you and I have had conversations on here before. You've put a lot of work into the culture of the company. And I think it really shows because we talk to a lot of happy drivers on here, and just like any other occupation that you might find yourself in, there's going to be good days and bad days, but it's about how much you actually want to come to work and put the work in for the company. So James, as a fly on the wall, I just really think that the culture at H&M Trucking is a real bright spot for sure. Any thoughts on that? Like you said before, like I've said earlier, you worked really hard on that.
Absolutely. I mean, not a lot of people know this, but when I first came to H&M, I went through every single department. I worked every single, from the shop to recruiting, and I sat with accounting. I really got to know. Like, it's not like I just went like, oh, you're dispatcher to manager. No, like I went through the paces. So once I got a lay of the land, then it became okay. Like, what do I need to do to create a company that has a standing and a base to grow, and a standing and base of good culture that can perpetuate that growth while growing, right? Because I can say culture, right? But if the people that are not a part of H&M aren't, they're not extensions of that belief, then you're not going to get it done, right?
Right.
So I've spent years now of kind of, let's say, reorganizing or cleaning through the ranks that culture, so that it truly is an extension of what my belief is, and that goes to and it all ends up in the driver's favor, right? It all ends up in supporting the driver. Sometimes I'd say like we've been a little bit heavier staff in one area versus another, and at the end of the day, we do that because we want to give the driver service. So everything is centric around being an overall quality company from the top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think you see that in your retention, right? You've got some people. I saw today on Facebook that somebody was congratulated for their 28th year working with H&M, and I know that you've got a bunch of people that have been with the company for a really long time. That right there is indicative that it's a good company to work for. People don't stick around and hate their life every single day. That's just not the way employees operate.
Right. If you're coming to work and you have a countdown clock of what your retirement date is, you're probably not at the right place.
Yeah.
And you know what? And you know what? I don't take that personally, right? If you don't come to work and are excited about what you're doing, then I don't want you there, because I want you to go find what you like to do, right? No different than you, Marcus. Like, you enjoy doing this. If you didn't enjoy doing this, like, we would all know it, but we can all hear it through your voice that you enjoy doing what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. If you don't enjoy doing the over the road stuff, if you don't enjoy doing the day-to-day office stuff, then it doesn't work. So it's really about bringing in people that care and enjoy, because that does bleed into the drivers, right? If I have people in the office that don't care, then they're not going to care about the driver. And that's the last thing we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to when we had, I believe it was Brian Allen on the show. He's the guy that got the clamshell put on his windshield. And we had Stacy, his dispatcher, on along with him. And when they told that story, you could hear the genuine concern that Stacy had for Brian when he was going through that. And that's just not something that every trucking company has, are these great relationships with dispatchers and driver managers and drivers all getting along and all working towards the same goal. In fact, I've heard some horror stories, especially from some of the larger carriers in the United States that will remain nameless, where they don't actually even get called by their name. They are just a number. And that translates. Like, you call somebody by their name or by their given nickname or their CB handle or whatever it is, it shows that you care enough to at least learn that and commit it to memory. And it might be a drop in the bucket, but it's a drop in the positive side of the bucket, if you will.
Absolutely. And, when you have people that, like you brought up, they're here for 28 years, and I want to say, I make a point to when people are on their leaving, when they're, get their retirement point, I make it a point to say thank you to them as well. Not just drivers, but to the office as well. Like, I'm here every single day, and I'm here not because, I come every day because I care about everybody that I'm working for, right? I care about the drivers. I care about the employees here. So I think that bleeds through to everybody.
Are there any messages that you want to send the drivers just because it is Driver Appreciation Week? I know, obviously, we're focusing on appreciating them all year around, but since it's the week and we actually pulled together a podcast episode about it, is there any message you'd like to send to the drivers that are listening right now for this special week?
Absolutely. And I think that I've shown my appreciation through them, through the equipment that I purchased, the amount of time, the thought process that we go into making their lives better. Sometimes as on the driver's side, it's like, well, what's happening over here but everything truly is thought out. I think that a lot of this the fruits of the labor will really show when this market turns, that a lot of things have been done for the benefit of them and the office too, but a lot of it has been done to make us the most efficient that we can when this thing turns, to really capture the upswing in the market, which at the end of the day is all they really care about, right? They want to be busy. They don't want to be sitting waiting. They don't want to, and some of those things right now that I'm hearing it's not just us. This is the entire trucking industry. I'm eager for this market to return because there are things that I would like to do more for driver appreciation. I'm just not going to do it right now when the economy's just dog shit. So excuse my language.
Oh no, it might be the best way I've heard it described ever since the market downturn. That's very accurate.
But yeah, there's between Eve and a big group of in Bulldog, a lot of people have talked about hey, what do you think about this? They have a bunch of great ideas to make Driver Appreciation Week something really cool and really, just really exciting and fun. And I'm like, guys, this is not the year for it. So, but in the future, we are thinking about making things even even drawing more attention to it. But it goes back to my original statement. I'm doing. It's not about what do you do for 7 days. It's what do you do for 52 weeks a year.
Yep, absolutely. And I will say, just to touch on what you said, can you imagine the party that we'll throw in an up year? I mean, it's sky's the limit, right? When this thing finally turns back around, I'm coming out there.
Absolutely. I think that was the plan.
It was.
So I think that's what they wanted you to do.
Yeah, I was going to come out there and spend a week going live, but unfortunately, we couldn't make it work this year. But that's the type of thing we're talking about. We will blow it out once this market turns around.
I think some of the ideas were given our way, like free Xboxes or PS5s or TVs or fridges or a bunch of different stuff. And I'm like, absolutely, I love the ideas. But also, if you're only giving one away to each driver, I don't know what that does to the rest. You got to be kind of fair to everybody to a degree.
Yep.
But I did like the spitball of the ideas, and I'm all for it. I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to if it brings a smile or joy or laugh or get someone excited for something, I'm all in. Let's do it if it makes sense.
Yeah, and just to give the drivers that are listening a peek behind the curtain, we did have all those grand ideas. I was going to fly out there, be out there for the whole week, meet a bunch of people. Then the next idea that came across the board was, once we started talking about budget, maybe we have Marcus stand in a goddamn field on I-80 with a sign. And that was more along the budget because of the way that the market is right now. Thank God that idea got shut down because I did not want to be the wacky waving, inflatable arm flailing tube man standing in a field along I-80. I didn't think that would do as much as me actually getting there to the terminal and being there for an entire week. So we'll look forward to that next year. I'm sure the videos would have been great. You guys would have had a blast with it.
We had a phenomenal marketing from it. Absolutely.
Well, James.
It was a clown show.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was afraid of. Clown show. I don't want to be called that. I thought I was past that. I turned 40. I was a clown show a bit in my 20s. I'm trying to bring a more mature air to my professional career at this point, James.
You are 40 now. You just turned 40.
Yep, just last weekend.
Now, how does that feel? Happy belated. I saw that on Facebook.
Thank you. I had a couple people ask me, a couple people that I know that have kids that are younger than I am say, oh my God, 40. I mean, I'm terrified. I don't want to turn 40. What's it like? And I told them, I think not having kids makes 40 kind of just another year. I look at all my friends starting to turn 40 and their kids are all at these milestones. My nephew just went into his first year in junior high school. He got a locker and a computer and it's starting to get real for him. He seems like he's turning into a little young adult. And, my other nephew is kind of up there in his grade school years. He's starting to get a lot of sports under his belt and everything. Look, man, I got 2 corgis and nothing changed. My foot hurt a little bit when I woke up the other day and I didn't know why. But that's really the tall and the short of it, James, to be honest with you.
Steve was talking to me, so I'm 36. H&M will be 37 in September. Or, sorry, October. It was October. It's coming up. It's a couple weeks from now. At some point here next month or so, we're turning 37. And she told me that H&M, when we turn 40, that we need to do something. And I'm like, really? Like 40? Like, is that like a milestone? Like, I don't view 40, like maybe 50. I just can't get. I don't know how I feel about 40 as a milestone.
Well, I mean, here's the deal: blow it out for yourself on your 40th, because that's what my wife did for me. She threw a huge party. She invited all of my friends and family, and that was really cool. But I kind of agree with you. The 50 milestone for a company, I feel like, is kind of that, that first big hill. Once you make it over that first big 50-year-old company age hill. It's all up. It's all, sunshine and rainbows from there. You did it, right?
Something like that. Something like that.
All right. Well, listen, James, I know you're busy, man. I really appreciate you clearing out some time for us today. I just really appreciate the time, and thank you for running such a great company. You mentioned it earlier. I do really love doing this. I feel very privileged that this is my job. And that goes tenfold because I get to work with H&M doing it. So we're here having a party on Driver Appreciation Week, but we're partying 52 weeks a year on this podcast, like you said. So thanks for being here, James. We'll get you back on in the future, all right?
All right, later, bud.
Next up here on our Driver Appreciation episode on the H&M Trucking Podcast, I've got Hopper Division Manager Brenda Hampton on the line. Brenda, always great to have you. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Marcus.
And I've also got Van Division Manager Brian Gernandt on the line. Brian, great to have you back as well.
Thank you.
Now, I just want to jump right in here. I sent you guys a list of questions, but I want to talk to you person to person real quick. When I was speaking with James Fonda earlier in this episode, one thing that he made very clear to me is that it's important that we appreciate our drivers and honor them 365 days a year. It's not just about this 1 week. So I'm actually going to jump to the second question in my list here first. How do you guys ensure that that drivers feel valued not only during Driver Appreciation Week, but all year round? And Brenda or Brian, I don't care who we start with here, just jump in, all right?
All right. Well, first of all, H&M's environment speaks for itself as kind of what I believe in here is we're very welcoming when the drivers come in, and that's throughout the year, whether it's orientation or just coming in to see us. We like to see their faces. We take time. Our dispatchers care. They're allowed to call the dispatchers when they need to talk, and that's an important thing, I believe, when it comes to drivers.
Right, and it's really just that root value that stems from H&M since the doors opened. We really value that. That's something, honestly, that we talk on a week-to-week basis with our teams internally to make our culture really understand the fact that we don't do all of this business, that everything is being done at H&M by ourselves, right? It's always with our teammates, our drivers, and really that focus of more of being a team players. That's really where it roots. We don't really look at a divisional issue. It's just we have a logistics and a driving team. We work together to manage, and we hope that is felt by our drivers, that when they do want to reach out to their driver managers, they do get a response from them. They do get callbacks. They're able to get them on the phones if need be, and that responses and callbacks are always done in a timely manner. But listening, probably one of the most important things that I've learned here at H&M myself personally is being sure that we listen. Priority number one is listen. Listen and ask questions if needed, but let's try to listen, because remember, everybody's kind of got their own opinions about a lot of things. And I think it's really important for us as a team here internally on the floor is to always be available to listen to our drivers, because our drivers do come up with some great resolve on situations that we're involved with.
It's such an important part to have the ear as well as the mouth, Brian. And trust me, as somebody that was born with way more mouth than ear, I can tell you, I really value that when you can tell that somebody's genuinely listening to you and not just waiting for that next opportunity to talk. And I've struggled with that throughout my life. My dad used to tell me, Marcus, if you'd shut your mouth 10% of the time, you'd solve 90% of your problems. And I think about that very frequently when I look at the culture at H&M, because it's clearly a culture of listening, understanding, and working together to solve problems. And when I talk to the drivers on this podcast, you can tell they don't only feel heard on this podcast. They have great relationships with their dispatchers and their driver managers. And, I've heard you guys say some very nice and personal things about some of the drivers over the 75 episodes that we've got into this podcast. When I'm talking to you about setting them up, emailing you about things, it's always very genuine, and you guys are very tuned in. And I wonder, is that something that you see through your experience? Is that something that's kind of unique to H&M? Because through all the other trucking companies that I work with, it does seem a little unique. There's a lot of companies out there, a lot of drivers have come from and ended up at H&M that they'll tell you, hey, I didn't even get called by my name back at my old company. I was a number. Do you guys see that across some of the drivers, and do you see them sort of fall into this culture a little bit easier because it is so understanding, so open?
You've touched on a topic that I love to talk about. I could take hours and hours about this because it's a passion of mine to listen to drivers as they're coming on to H&M. I'm fortunate enough to be given the honor to welcome drivers in, whether that be at a company level orientation or just a van operations orientation. And that is a conversation that I try to have with everybody that I'm able to meet at those times and venues, discussing just that, exactly what you were talking about. How was the communication? How was the appreciation? How did you, as a driver, work with driver managers? And the stories that I've heard, I'm just accustomed to H&M's culture here, right? So what I hear from them and their feedback to me, sometimes my jaw drops, but ultimately over time, my jaw doesn't drop anymore. It's because, unfortunately, what I hear is pretty common. And I can say this with confidence. We get a lot of compliments. We get a lot of comments from drivers that really like the idea that we're going to treat them like quote unquote human beings, right? Not robots, not people that just do, right? They really get the culture and the feeling and the sense, starting right off with just our orientation process, that they're here to be part of our team. We do this as a team. We don't do this without them. And we really, really try to strive to give that principle there. And we hope then that value continues on when they go into their driver management team and they get to know their driver managers. So that is a very common conversation that I get to have with them on the front side. When we first get to know them and they're first introduced to H&M after they've been through recruiting. And it's a really nice conversation we have about just how well we communicate and how they perceive it just from the first couple of days that they're here for their orientation process. So,
and I like to bounce off that a little bit too, Brian. I came from a larger company to this smaller company. And, you think about it, it was just truck number. And you come to this smaller place and it brings you a little bit closer to the driver too, right? So I have drivers that become my friends because I'm not calling them a truck number. I'm calling them their name. It also provides respect. The driver, I think that provides a lot of respect from the driver because you've now put him in as a person, not just an object. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I believe it's important to get to know your drivers by their name. I like to pull up their face even on a profile just to see what I'm talking to. So we always encourage the drivers to stop in. Let us put a face to that name again. Let us get to know you. And I really appreciate H&M bringing that to the table.
Yeah, it's really cool. In the couple of times I've been at the actual office there and visiting with office staff for various reasons, you can tell that drivers would just walk in and it's like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. And, you might not get to see that person, but every 4 weeks or every 6 weeks, or maybe even, Eve's even told us before that some drivers will only make their way in just a couple of times a year. But you can tell, even if they're only coming in a couple times a year, they're happy to see everyone and everyone's happy to see them. And I don't think I can talk about it enough and how important that is because of the horror stories that you guys are both talking about. And some of the ones, Brian, just like you said, make my jaw hit the floor, because I know from my work with H&M that without the drivers, the whole bus doesn't even get out of the starting blocks. It stays parked. And to think about another company just considering that person a number and nothing but miles on a page, man, especially after as many drivers as I've met and developed relationships with, it almost pisses me off, to be honest with you, because of the job that they do and how hard they work out there. They deserve this type of treatment, in my humble opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I'm going to ask this next question, and I know a lot of what we might talk about here has been mentioned before on the podcast, but it's Driver Appreciation Week, and it's important to me for anybody else that might be listening that's either not an H&M driver or not a driver in general. I know that we've got people out there that listen to this podcast that aren't even in the trucking industry, and I want to shed a little bit of light on some things that those people might not quite appreciate. What are some challenges that you guys see your drivers face that the public might not be aware of? And how do you guys support them when they go through those? Does anything come to mind there?
Well, drivers are treated, I'm going to say, lower than what anybody expects, right? So they're dealing with from the day they, pull up at a shipper or consignee. That shipper or consignee might be starting out with a bad day, and that leads to the driver. Just right away. So
true.
Yeah.
True.
So, we don't even in the back pages see what they're being treated like.
Right.
And it's hard.
Yeah, we come into the office every day bubbly. We've got our environment, 72 degrees, hot summers, cold winters. We don't have to much trudge through things. We don't have people blocking our entrances. And it is a conversation, believe it or not, once again, the recognition given to the drivers, i.e. in my orientations, I recognize that straight up. Say, you know what? This world here inside the office is a 72-degree environment, same thing, Monday through Friday. We get to go home at a specific time, and some of us, come in at different hours of the day. But a driver, right, they're everything. It could be midnight. It could be 6 in the morning, 3 a.m. Could get a last-minute phone call. It's crazy to know what that schedule is that a human has to adhere to sometimes in our trucking environment. And just that alone versus, hey, today you're going to go up 11,000 feet up through a mountain today and consider putting snow chains on when it's 70 degrees down at the base of the mountain. Or you're dressed in shorts and all of a sudden you're with a coat, a winter coat that's needed just to be able to check at a pull-off station or something like that. It's those little detailed things that a driver sees every day that they can get into every day that we, just the general public, don't even partake in any of that in our normal routines in a work environment versus when you're on the road and you're in a truck, your environment changes by the second, literally, and by the hour, you're changing your scenery, you're changing everything. And the things that are being asked from a driver, those stress points, the stress points that they harbor all day long and finish the end of the day is just, hey, you got to get out of there. You have to go and get away from it. You get 11 hours, you're done. It's time to walk away from it. We've got to get some rest. And hats off to the H&M team, H&M drivers of just doing that for us day in and day out, weekdays, weeknights, whenever, weekends. Those are the things I think the general public just truly doesn't understand, that it never ends. It's every minute of the day there's something going on in an environment of a truck driver. They're never really just sitting idle when they're out on the road.
No. And I think the general population sees this, their milk in the fridge at the grocery store, their clothes on the rack at the store. That's great. But they don't think about how that got there. They don't think about that driver that just drove 11 hours for a week to deliver something, and it's like, so they battle things daily that we just don't, that the general population takes no consideration of how that product got to the shelf.
a restroom break. I have to use the restroom. We walk 50 feet, 100 feet to go to a restroom. Truck driver's got to be, well, let's see.
Find a spot.
I got to find a spot. I got to park this big rig. I've got to figure out where the next location might be, somewhere that I have no clue where I'm at. And it's just that stress level. That
I got to make my appointment on
correct.
time.
Yeah, staying on schedule with everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as we talk here, the stress level one is great. I mean, for people to manage through that, for our drivers to manage through that every day, that to me is just a mountain in itself. Just being able to put up with the different personalities that they see on the road, at the shippers, at the consignees. And Brenda's absolutely right. It could be first thing in the morning, your first deal, you're delivering a load or picking up a load, and you're having a great day. You got coffee in your hand. I'm checking in, and that guy just rides you and reads you the riot, and it's like, get out of here, and you had nothing to do with that. And that starts your day, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a man, and to be able to dig deep as our drivers do and walk away from it and keep that friendly smile to show professionalism. Hats off to you guys, man. That's just freaking awesome. It's great.
Yeah. Those are great examples. You know, I had somebody ask me once, they said, what did you learn about the job of truck driving through the job that you're doing and all the people that you talk to? And I wanted to sum it up for them real easy. And I said, imagine the most angry and stressed you've ever been in rush hour traffic trying to get to work on time so you don't end up with another write-up for being late. Now I want you to extrapolate that over not 8, not 9, not 10 hours, but 11 hours of your day. Imagine that you had that on your shoulders, plus 80,000 pounds, plus a bunch of people that don't care to give you any room or space, and they're not being safe. They're driving like Dale Earnhardt out there. That's a very small version of what a truck driver goes through every day. And we didn't even touch on that customer service standpoint when, you're talking about you're dealing with people out there. A lot of people think truck drivers, it's just a solitude job and you're always by yourself. But there's people on both ends of those deliveries every single time. And those people aren't always the easiest to deal with. They don't always make it easy on the drivers. And it's about the drivers being able to wear that daily and still go out and face that. And to know that H&M has so many of them that do it with a smile and continue to deliver the top echelon of customer service that I know that they do, it blows me away sometimes. And as I said before, I just don't think it can go understated. And that's the reason that I really wanted to give you guys a minute to hammer that point home. It's an underappreciated job, and for the life of me, especially after doing this podcast, I can't understand why. I'm glad that we've got a full week to dedicate to them, but as we said off the top here, 365 days is when we appreciate our drivers. And again, I'll say H&M's got one of the best crops of them that I think anybody could ask for.
One of the deals you asked about people that are listening from the outside in, right, that don't even do truck driving, in comparison, when you see a military person, when you see a police officer, when you see a fireman, it's kind of common maybe that we say, hey, thanks for your service, right, your community service. I always look at a truck driver as the same sense. They're providing a community service across the nation. And I can't tell you how many times it's brought a lot of pleasure to a driver, even myself. I'll be selfish here and say when I'm at a truck plaza and I go in and I'm just traveling on my own, whatever it is, I'd be sure to at least thank a driver while I'm there. I just say, hey, thanks for your time out here on the road. I appreciate it. I realize that you're away from your family and friends. And you just can't imagine what that does to a human. So I challenge people from the outside, when they do get an opportunity to just say hi to a driver, they're just like you and I, right? They're people, and to say thank you to them, that just speaks more than they would ever even know. Period.
That's a great point, Brian, and I'm going to take you up on that challenge because I often see drivers and I think to myself, man, if they knew what I did for a living, I think I could sit here and have a real cool conversation with that person. But I've never thought about just thanking them for their service. And we've got drivers working for H&M that are former service members that made the great sacrifice and served this great nation in our armed forces. and they'll tell you to a person, I still feel like I serve this country. My service hasn't stopped since I left the military. I'm just doing it in a different capacity now. And I 100% agree with that. You know, we were all up in arms about how the shelves were empty during COVID, and the shelves weren't empty. There was stuff on the shelves. There just wasn't as much. And the only reason that was the case is because we still had drivers out there grinding while the rest of us were holed up at home.
Yep.
And yet, again, you just can't understate that type of sacrifice because, listen, they've got families too. They've got people that they're worried about. They don't want to bring back illness and get their family sick. They don't want to, be out there when everybody else is holed up at home, binge watching Netflix under a blanket. And they did. And I think that, again, we just can't understate that. And that's a whole purpose around this episode, is to really drive that point home during Driver Appreciation Week, that it's not just a week, man. It's all year round. And I want to give you guys a chance here to give me some examples of drivers that went above and beyond recently, or maybe it's not recently. Maybe it's a story that you just haven't told that you'd like to get out there, whether it be an example of just stellar workmanship, or an example of being a good human, or an example of going above and beyond the duties that the jobs require. What do you guys have for me in this realm?
Well, you know, we've had drivers, I would have to say on the hopper and probably on the van side, that have come in with little to nothing on their plate, right? And next thing you know, I'm interested in buying a vehicle. I'm interested in purchasing a house or getting a place to actually live other than the truck. And we hear those success stories. Within time, you know, those drivers are coming back to us and we hear thank you, because they are getting the things that they've looked forward to and wanted. You know, that's one of the big things is, drivers feel like they're taken care of on a certain base, and they can provide that stuff for themselves.
Absolutely, and I'll second that, because that's really when we look at this as a success story for our drivers is their quality of living, quality of life improving. That's just so big to our company when we can marry that up in a relationship on top of everything. That really brings us true gratitude for everything involved. You know, you can go through and pick out success stories, like we did an exceptional job at a consignee or a receiver versus a shipper, and those messages are put back to the drivers at the time when a customer does finally take the time to reach out. But honestly, as Brenda stated, it's really that big picture of, do they feel that they've really upped their game while they've been with H&M? And that really, as a success story, in our opinion, is the biggest goal set, right? You come to H&M looking for maybe what you didn't have in any realm, any category, you name it. And we hope that during that process that we're helpful with that to move along. Because again, that's really our appreciation back to the driver, that this is what we can help with. And if we have a team environment, we can work together and make this well. So those are conversations and things that we do hear, the success stories from drivers. Hey, I'm going on a cruise. I'm going to go traveling. I bought a Harley. I bought a pickup truck. I bought a new house. I moved. I was finally able to do this. I paid off all my debts. Those are huge, huge human issues that I think impacts people the most.
Sure.
The one I like to hear the most is, I want to retire here.
Yeah, right.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great deal.
You know,
great
they're
goal.
happy.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's gotta trigger those parental instincts a little bit. Now, I'm not sure if either one of you have kids. I don't have kids, but there's certain moments in life where I felt like, man, I just feel like a proud parent right now. And you know, just recently for me, I wakeboarded with my young nephew, and he's just getting into it. He's just starting. He and I were up together riding at the same time, and I felt this overwhelming sense of pride in this little guy. And I assume that you guys have those same feelings well up when a driver comes in and says, man, I got my eye on a brand new F-350, and those things are spendy. And then a year later, you see him pull up to the lot in a brand new F-350. I imagine it's just that same sense of pride. Like, you know, it's working at a good company. It's liking your job that makes those types of things possible.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. That's, you know, those are the little things I think about the culture that people don't always get to see. And that's one of the cool parts about the podcast is we have a little bit more time to sit here and have these conversations, and we can pull those stories out. And I really appreciate you guys bringing those in. And I know you're both busy. Before I let you go here, because you've given us so much time already today, but there's one more thing that I want to give you the chance to do. Is there a message that either one of you want to send out to their drivers and their families as we celebrate them not only year-round, but especially here on Driver Appreciation Week?
Well, you know, I think Brian and I would both agree that to stay safe out there. Keep your head on the swivel. Always plan on four-wheelers and other truckers doing, you know, the opposite thing of what you want them to do. So stay cautious, stay safe, get home to your families.
Right, and we thank you for all your dedication and your loyalty to H&M. We don't take that lightly here, and I hope we always do a better job every day to show that back to the drivers, and a special message to all their friends and family that are at home that sacrifice their time at home, because that's huge. That driver is out there earning a living, working with the country, and for them to give that up for the time away from the house, know that H&M does appreciate that of their families and their friends.
Very well said there. That is Hopper Department Manager Brenda Hampton and Van Department Manager Brian Gernandt. Thank you both so much for being here today. You know, I mentioned this in James's interview as well because we struggled with the same thing. I apologize just over the top of myself because of our technical difficulties that we've had here today. You guys handled it great. Like I said, seasoned pros on this podcast. Can't thank you enough for being here today to join us for our Driver Appreciation Week episode.
Always a pleasure, Marcus. Yep, always a pleasure, man.
See you next time.
Take care. Great stuff there from Brian and Brenda, as always. Love having those two on the show. You can hear it for sure when you listen to Brian and Brenda talk about their team of drivers, how much they truly do care. And it goes beyond just a bottom line thing. As they said, they've heard horror stories that you drivers have told here on this podcast in the past, that not every company is like H&M Trucking. Not every company cares on a personal level about their drivers and the health of them and their families and all the rest that goes into that. And that's one of the reasons that I feel so fortunate and privileged to be able to be the host of the H&M Trucking Podcast. You know, I'm a little bit out of the loop as far as the family dinners are concerned. I kind of sit over at the kids' table when you look at the company at large, but I'm okay being there. I'll hold down the kids' table forever. I just want to be a part of it. And, you know, James touched on it a little bit in his interview, and I definitely wanted to hammer that point home, how enjoyable this is to me. I hope it always comes off as 100% genuine, because it is. This is kind of a dream job for me, and being able to work with such an awesome group of drivers and such an awesome group of office staff, it really does make getting out of bed every day very easy, and just can't thank you all enough for that. This podcast is good. It's worth listening to, and it's 75 episodes in now because all of you H&M drivers and staff give me the opportunity to make good content. I couldn't do it without you. I don't know enough about the inner workings of the company. I'm learning. I'm getting there. I've got my white H&M hat on, 7 days a week. I'm always picking up things, but I'll never be a true on the ground, boots on the ground, out in the weeds employee. It's just a different scope of employment here, but I'm happy to be a part of it in any way that I can, even if I just am the fly on the wall and listening, or if I'm actually getting to come in here and entertain every single week. So thank you, drivers. From all of us here at H&M Trucking to you, I want to extend a very happy Driver Appreciation Week. I really hope that you take advantage of some of the things that might be offered to you out there. I know that sometimes there's some discounts and deals during Driver Appreciation Week. Sometimes you might even back your way into a free meal. Look, the worst anybody can tell you is no. So when you're out at a truck stop this week and you look at the counter person and you say, hey, you got anything going on for Driver Appreciation Week? Because I'm a driver. You never know what they might hand you or do for you. I mean, even if it was just a free shower credit or a free parking spot for the night, I think you'd probably take them up on it. So thank you for everything you do, drivers. Stay safe out there. Keep the shiny side up. And as always, and maybe you should hit them with this at the truck stop too, stay fresh, cheese bags. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the H&M Trucking Podcast. Please leave a review, subscribe, and connect with Marcus over at the H&M Trucking social media channels. And if you're considering a job at H&M, find us at hmtrucking.com. Until next time, stay safe and ahead of the curve, drivers.